The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at www.mtsu.edu/CEM.
Hello, I'm Dr. Laura Clark, Director of the Center for Educational Media and Professional Development at MTSU's College of Education. Welcome to the 4th Annual ELL Collaborative Summer Academy at MTSU. The ELL Collaborative was our first collaborative, part of a broader initiative, the PK-12 Collaborative at MTSU, originating here in the Center for Educational Media. We have expanded the PK-12 Collaborative to now include a second collaborative, the School Counselors Collaborative, and are planning to start a third collaborative in the coming year for special education. We hold collaborative meetings in the fall and spring of each school year, as well as a summer conference, the Collaborative Summer Academy. For those joining us today for the first time, the ELL Collaborative offers professional development for educators who work with English learners, including ESL teachers, general education teachers, administrators, coordinators, and directors from schools and districts in Tennessee. The ELL Collaborative is collaborative in nature because Tennessee educators serve as presenters to share ideas for strategies, materials, programs, technology that have been successful for them in classrooms. The collaborative is participant-driven, with the educators identifying the topics of sessions based on their needs. It's especially beneficial for districts with fewer resources and smaller staffs supporting English learners. It supports new teachers just beginning to work with English learners. And through the collaborative, you can develop professional support networks across the state of Tennessee, including individual contacts statewide. The collaborative offers multiple sessions during the school year to address topics and apply PD immediately in the classroom sessions. Our sessions are available at no charge to participants. We're offering 3 sessions in today's Summer Academy. First, we will hear about the implementation of WIDA 2020 standards from the Tennessee Department of Education. Our second session will offer ideas for engaging with families of English learners. And the final session today will look at screeners used with English learners, with an emphasis on the new kindergarten screener. If you have any questions for presenters today, please post your questions on the live stream chat, which will be shared with presenters at the end of their presentation. So now, I'd like to invite our first presenter to join us on screen. We're fortunate to have Debra Frantz lead off our Summer Academy today. Debra was recently appointed to the position of Director of English Learner and Immigrant Programs, Division of Special Populations, Tennessee Department of Education. And so we're really happy to have her join us today in that capacity. Her presentation today, Best for All, WIDA 2020 Standards Implementation. So Debra, thanks for being with us, and I'll go off screen now for your presentation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Clark. It is truly a pleasure to be here with you today and the team at MTSU. We certainly thank MTSU for the support and we'll get started today for the WIDA 2020 standards implementation at this time. So this first slide, of course, emphasizes Tennessee motto and vision for Best for All, that we will set a path for all students on that path to success. Our three focus areas here you see are academics, educators, and student readiness. I do invite you to go to the Best for All website on the Tennessee Department of Ed website to learn more about programs and supports for this vision. At the Tennessee Department of Education, my position lives in special populations, and I work collaboratively with Jan Lanier in federal programs and oversight, and Nancy Williams in assessment, who certainly helps us with all things WIDA access. Today's session goals, we will review the WIDA 2020 standards, a very high-level overview of the resource available to us. We will describe and explain the factors related to the rollout that impact effectiveness. We will know where to find online WIDA training resources, which of course are very important to all of us, and identify and apply actionable next steps at the district and school levels for year one. So let's get started. I wanted to first also mention that this is a free resource, the WIDA 2020 Standards Framework. You can go, I'll give you the web address on the next slide, but this is free and downloadable for all educators in the state of Tennessee. Tennessee is a part of the WIDA consortium, so again, this is a free resource. Some of your districts may have the paper version, but if you don't, again, it's free and downloadable, and all of the resources that I will be sharing with you today come from this standards framework. So just to share with you briefly a bit of what we have been doing, we have had learning opportunities within the WIDA e-learning portal. And you see here also there were a couple of live, if you will. We know live can mean different things at this point, but we had live virtual sessions in May and June, which were a two-part series about planning with the 2020 standards. On this also, you see two of the courses that are offered within the WIDA e-learning portal, but there are many, many more that are available. And there you see also the WIDA website, wida.wisc.edu. And again, the resource itself is free and downloadable. I wanted to start this morning with really the why behind the need for WIDA standards implementation. And it's always a good thing to review data. Certainly at this point, we're going to share with you some achievement data from 2019 because at this point, that is the most recent data we have to share with you. This first comparison is between English learners and non-English learners in the area of English language arts, and this again is from 2019. The type on this may be a little bit small for you. I just want to point out that the all student category is captured in navy blue and the EL subgroup is captured in gray. Down at the bottom, those are grades 3 through 8 ELA assessments. And then you also have English 1 and English 2. Before we move on, and as you are capturing some thoughts here, I do want to mention that it's not a mistake on grades 8 and the English 2 assessment. That achievement data was less than 1%, and therefore that's the reason that you don't see that wonderful gray bar for English learners in those particular categories. All right, so that is ELA. And now let's take a look at math. Again, the all student group is represented by blue and the English learner group is gray. At the bottom, you see grades 3 through 8 math assessments. And at the end there, you see Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. Okay, so this next part of the presentation, we've looked at the why behind it. So this next section will review the big ideas that anchor the WIDA framework, key language uses, and proficiency level descriptors. So these are all items to consider within this framework. This information coming up is a brief overview of the very detailed information which is housed within the WIDA standards framework. And again, it's available for independent study within the e-learning portal. I want to emphasize that the courses within the e-learning portal are not just for ESL teachers. They are available for all educators in Tennessee. And if by chance you don't have access to those courses, then certainly you can contact your ESL coordinator or ESL director in your district, and they can provide that access to you. I will say that as we begin to review this information, I want to remind you at the end, towards the end, we will share with you the Tennessee 3-year implementation plan. So I say that to emphasize that we realize this cannot happen overnight. We want to take this slow and steady and make sure that we do things correctly and support you in this implementation. And I do want to suggest that if you are an English language arts teacher, K through 12, for this coming school year, please do ask for access to those WIDA courses within the e-learning portal. Because as you'll learn a little bit later on, this is the year that we hope to build awareness between the ESL and ELA colleagues. Okay, we are going to start with the big ideas. WIDA has 4 wonderful big ideas that anchor the framework, and they are, as you can see here, equity, integration, collaboration, and functional approach. Within the upcoming review of those WIDA standards rollout, you should see pieces of each of these within the plan. I would like to invite you, however, at this point to place in the chat which one of these big ideas may relate to one of the reasons that was shared, which may be contributing to those achievement gaps that we reviewed earlier. So if you feel like any of these really may be the cause, part of the cause, or maybe you see several of these as being the cause of the achievement gaps between English learners and all students, if you would type in one or however many you feel of these big ideas may relate to that data that we did share earlier. Okay, we're going to continue to move along here, and this next big idea is that of equity. I'm certain that as ESL professionals, we all have a heart and a mind for equity. We see here that this is built into Standard 1. This is the language for social and instructional purposes. And what WIDA has provided to us is really the emphasis around needing to incorporate Standard 1, the language of social and instructional purposes, across all additional standards. So you see within the graphic there that Standards 2 through 5 are those more closely related to your content areas: math, science, and social studies, and language arts. And the use of Standard 1 helps us to bridge that gap between the personal, the background knowledge, the ways of learning, the cultural connections, and we realize that this is a critical foundation to bridge to the academic. So certainly Standard 1 is going to be incorporated into all unit and lesson plans. This next big idea is really what I see as the big push for us. This is the integration of content and language. Dr. Fernanda Kay shared this at a recent WIDA presentation, and I thought it was incredibly valuable in that it reminds us that the integration of content and language is vital to an assets-based pedagogy. And we are all continuously developing language throughout life. I think we can realize that as lifelong learners, and certainly the emphasis is on us learning language through content and content through language. We know that these cannot be isolated, and that English learners advance in their language development as we integrate these two. Okay, our next big idea, collaboration. Again, this cannot happen alone. We cannot take this challenge of teaching our English learners solely. This cannot be solely placed upon the responsibility of ESL teachers. Collaboration is key here, and we know that collaboration is both needs structure, doesn't it? It needs structure, and these have to be developed within a macro system, so system-wide structures, as well as the micro, the classroom practices. So there is a thinking prompt on this slide, and really, as you begin to think about collaboration, we'd like to hear from you in terms of your thinking. What structures must be in place in your school or classroom setting to support productive collaboration? So what do you need when it comes to being able to collaborate with your peers so that WIDA standard implementation can indeed take place? The next big idea is the functional approach to language development. Again, this is a slide that WIDA has provided to us. We know that language is dynamic, that we need to emphasize function over form. This framework, as you can see here, it makes visible the genres that are valued by particular communities, such as identifying differences in what counts as evidence in social studies versus science. We know that we can use, each standard provides language expectations, functions, and features to use while unit planning and to use while reviewing student work, and to use these to set important student language goals. We're going to take a closer look at these standards here in just a moment. So now we are moving from big ideas to the framework. We've reviewed the conceptual framing of language and content integration through these big ideas. So we're now going to move into key language uses. And you see those KLUs there in the green portion of this graphic. So let's take a look here at the key language uses. We see that these are prominent language uses across disciplines, and they represent a systematic analysis of academic content standards and literature. They prioritize and organize content and language integration. Of course, we know that that is extremely important. And they bring focus and coherence to the language of schooling. So if you recall that the language of schooling lives in Standard 1, this should be integrated throughout all standards and when you plan for your lessons and units. So this is just related more directly to content. I wanted to point out to you, as you see here also, the 4 key language uses, and they are narrate, argue, inform, and explain. And you see those there in that wonderful graphic at the top right: narrate, argue, inform, and explain. I wanted to make sure that we are all aware of where we can find the KLUs and language expectations within the WIDA framework, so you can begin developing or continue developing your own knowledge of language development. So let's take a look at a sample WIDA standard with our language expectations. With this standard for social studies and this language expectation, we see here the breakdown of this standard. We see that in the blue bubble here, we see that it is for language for social studies, that it is for grade level clusters 2 and 3. We see that the key language use is argue, and finally we see that the communication mode is expressive. So hopefully the way that WIDA has now built out the standard format is more familiar to us. If you have been a classroom teacher, we know that the standards look just more similar to how WIDA has devised and broken down the standards for us here. So that's one way that WIDA has made things just more familiar, more relatable to many of us. And at this time, I want us to take a close look at a grades 4 and 5 WIDA ELD standard. This one is for language of language arts. Again, these resources can be found within the WIDA standard framework. But for this, I wanted us just to kind of take a look at the broad overview of how this is arranged. We see at the top that this is for grades 4 and 5. And at this point, let's just realize that this type of page is available for every grade span. This particular one we see at the top is the language for language arts, and we realize that the key language use is in form. It's, of course, there at the top for you. The next section is our language expectation section. So within that shaded box, you see both the expressive and the language expectation that are interpretive and expressive goals. The expressive goals are broken down further underneath so that we see their language functions and features. And of course, these are wonderful to use as we are developing model texts, which we'll take a look at as we annotate them. But personally, I really appreciated the way that WIDA provided this resource to us. This particular tool provides a connection with our content area teachers so that you can take this to your content area teachers and really begin to explain further in depth about what language goals can be. Speaking of annotated text, this is a key, a legend, if you will, that's found on page 132 within the WIDA framework. This portion of the framework is one of my absolute favorites because, again, I think it just really clearly explains to us what we're looking for. We know the demands of language increase as the grade levels progress through K through 12. But for this, you're going to find the key, as you see here, and the annotated text samples. So you're going to see that teachers have used this. They've created these mentor texts. So WIDA collected these from educators and students across the WIDA consortium. Teachers use these mentor texts really to help students see what language is represented and used by different authors across the different content areas, and really can be used as exemplars to highlight the language needs and the author's purpose and the way of presenting the information. You could also, as students produce their writing within a lesson, you could use this same key to look for what students are currently able to produce and then define what their needs are. So this is an excellent way where you can create those short-term language goals within the ILPs. This is certainly a resource that I value a lot, and I think we're really going to take some time within this next several years to dig into this and to become familiar with how we can, again, collaborate with our content colleagues and explain how language can be identified within the different content areas. Okay, so now we've taken a look with key language uses about how we can be rather, I guess, just kind of create those short-term goals and get an immediate response and identify needs. This next resource is also developed by WIDA, and this is the proficiency level descriptors. These represent the continuum of language development, and it is the big picture. So you can think of the annotated text as the little picture, if you will. The proficiency level descriptors is this continuum of language and helps to identify how language progresses. So if you were trying to explain really to a content colleague, or they wanted to learn more about this and to see what the overall goal is for our English learners, you could use this as a resource. You can use this as a resource to identify next steps as well. Using those annotated texts, you can use this to define where in the continuum a student currently is. And again, use that to set your goals. The PLDs are designed to be used in coordination with language expectations, language functions, and language features. So where the language expectations offer goals for how all students might use language to meet academic content standards, the PLDs offer a succinct description of how multilingual learners might develop language across levels of language proficiency in moving towards meeting those language expectations. I do want to mention here that scaffolding learning increases accessibility for our multilingual learners. And of course, this supports and bolsters their opportunities to meaningfully engage in grade level content. So just so you know, these proficiency level descriptors, WIDA tells us that these are predicated on the idea that appropriate scaffolding supports are being used and are helping our students to move through the language proficiency levels. So as you can see, this is yet another wonderful resource that WIDA has provided to us for our use in supporting our English learners. Okay, we've covered quite a bit just in terms of what the resources are from WIDA. And this next slide here that you see in front of you is just a reminder that there are many resources within the WIDA e-learning portal. This is what your dashboard may look like. As you can see, there are several courses here. Again, if you don't have access to this, please ask your ESL coordinator or director, and we highly encourage our ELA colleagues to ask for this for the upcoming year, as our focus is going to be to build those collaborative opportunities between ESL and ELA. So at this point, we have reviewed what WIDA has to offer for us, and I would like to share with you Tennessee's WIDA implementation plan. As we stated from the beginning, we know this can't happen overnight. What we want to do is certainly support you along the way, and I'm going to share with you some supports that we have provided and will provide to you. So here we see four big steps. If you look to the far right, you see that our ultimate goal is the improved English learner growth and achievement overall, which is what we know we are all aiming for. This first year, as you see, for 21-22, is to build awareness. We will be doing that through highlighting and digging deep into those WIDA standards, the key language uses, the proficiency level descriptors. So again, we're taking this year to learn about these key items and learn how we can share these with our ELA colleagues so that WIDA standards may be implemented across all content areas. The next year, the 22-23 school year, is where we are going to invite, again, our ELA colleagues to implement those WIDA standards. As we have collaborated the previous year, year one will be 22-23 for the implementation within ELA. We will then bring on our math colleagues to invite them to build their awareness of WIDA standards. And as you can see, the following year will be for science and social studies to help them to build awareness as well. Our goal in year three, as you see 23-24 alignment, will be that we want to provide to you sample crosswalk, a crosswalk of standards. I do want to mention that at the back of the WIDA framework, there are already crosswalk samples for you to look at, so you can see how those WIDA standards relate to content area standards. We would like to invite you to share any type of crosswalk documents that you are creating within your districts, and so that we can begin to share with one another how those WIDA standards can be related to content area standards. And certainly, as we mentioned here at the beginning of this slide, our ultimate goal is to improve English learner growth and achievement. So a side item, if you will, to that is that the WIDA Access Assessment will be revised. It is projected to be revised in about 5 years. So we certainly want our English learners to be prepared for that assessment. But more than that, we want them to be prepared for life and for our graduates to go on and to be able to have those post-secondary opportunities and career opportunities by helping them build language throughout their learning. So again, just at the bottom here, a reminder that we will begin with ELA and follow through the following years with math and then science and social studies. So what can we do to support you? What are we doing to support you? Certainly, we appreciate the collaboration with MTSU and their ELL collaborative. We are here with you in July, and we hope to be here with you in the following sessions as well. We're thankful to Dr. Clark and her team at MTSU for allowing us to share information via this platform. We will also be present at 10 TESOL in October. So State Day is October 21st. And we invite you to come and listen to updates from the state, and more information about the agenda for that day will be passed along through 10 TESOL. We also realize that as educators, you need support from your local administrators. And we want to develop training so that our administrators and instructional leads understand the importance of WIDA standards and incorporating them into content area classrooms. Certainly, we will also, within those trainings, stress how those annotated texts and language goals can be used to make connections within the ILPs and setting goals within that living document. We also are arranging regional trainings, and this is going to be a bring a buddy type of training. So if you are an ESL colleague and you know of a wonderful ELA colleague this year, we invite you to bring that colleague to one of our regional trainings, and we're going to build that collaboration. You may already have that collaboration, but we're going to strengthen that collaboration so that you can share WIDA standards and, again, those key language uses so that we can highlight language within the content areas. So those are some of the ways that we're going to support you. Certainly, we also realize that this cannot happen without the knowledge of our parents having the knowledge about ESL and building language. So we want to make sure that we have increased parental involvement, and part of that will be to develop a sample packet. We know that certainly we are obligated to give parent notification letters about children being identified as English learners, but we also want to make sure that our parents fully understand what ESL is all about. How are we supporting your children in ESL classes? And beyond that, how are we working with our content area colleagues to ensure that they are supported across the entire day? So we'll have a sample packet. Much of this information comes straight from WIDA. WIDA has many valuable resources for us to share with parents. And we just want to make sure everyone is aware of those particular standards and that they are sharing them at the district level. Another concern that we've heard is that you want more timely information in terms of ESL and what we have to support you at the state level. So we're working on a centralized ESL repository of supports. I would love to see this built out so that there is also an opportunity for districts and teachers to share resources within that particular venue. But just know that, we hear you and we're developing. It could be something as a, like a live binder that assessment uses. But the aim certainly is to develop this so that you will have access to important information from the Department of Education. And finally, what we're also hearing from the field is that you want more opportunities for collaboration around supporting students with interrupted formal education, our SIFE students. So certainly we will be building out those opportunities. We realize that some districts have hundreds of ESL teachers and some have very few, and we want everyone to be supported. So it's through these collaborative efforts that we certainly hope to build everyone's expertise across Tennessee. And I did want to share with you also that there is an open survey about the WIDA 2020 standards implementation. This particular survey is open. It will be ongoing and open. And we want to hear from you about your requests for support. Perhaps you are at a place where you need help getting started, or maybe you've started and you need some additional information on how you can advance to next steps within your district or your school. This survey will be an opportunity for you to request support and to share successes. We know that you are doing fabulous things out in the field of ESL, and we want to hear from you. We could have opportunities to bring struggling schools or districts together with those that are having great success. I know in Tennessee, we're all about helping one another. I truly know that, being a native Tennessean, and I hope that we can all come together, and I know we're willing to share with one another. So this is an opportunity that we would like to happen, and we need your input via that survey. We've also started an ESL teacher focus group. So we had our first meeting in June, and we will meet quarterly. This is yet another way that we are hearing from teachers directly. So if you have or know of a member from your district who is part of that teacher focus group, please communicate with him or her to let them know what information to pass along to the state. And again, our next meeting will be in September, and this is just yet another way that we are ensuring that we hear the needs of all. We also have monthly Title III office hours where Jan Lanier and myself are there to answer questions. Nancy Williams in assessment is able to also provide information to us for these office hours. So your director has information about this, and when they feel that they need to join and ask questions, this opportunity is open for them as well. We don't want to forget about the voices of our ESL parents and students. So we are going to develop surveys that we will probably ask for your assistance with in terms of making sure our parents know about the surveys and that they provide their input as well. You know, if you are a parent, you want to be able to speak on the behalf of your child's education. So we want to allow all parents to do that, and we want to provide the opportunity for them via a survey, as well as our EL students. Student voice is incredibly important, and we want to hear from our students as far as, what's working well for them, what are their needs, and take all of this into consideration as we continue educating our multilingual learners. So here we are kind of towards the end of the presentation here, and I'm going to invite you to think about next steps. As you think through the WIDA 2020 standards implementation and how your team can contribute, if you would, just take a moment to consider and identify one next step for you or for your team. If you have any questions or concerns that you may have regarding this particular plan, we want to hear from you as well. If you would like to email myself or Jan Lanier, if it's about assessment, then by all means, contact Nancy Williams. She is our WIDA Access Guru. So this is just an open invitation to let us know of any questions that you may have. So at this time, I am going to turn it back over to Dr. Clark, and thank you once again for allowing us this opportunity to share this plan with you.
Debra, thank you. This was a presentation full of great information. And so we have some questions from participants, and I'd like to share some of those with you now. And we'll go back in the order of your presentation. So let's go back to that data you presented to us in the beginning. There was a question about, do we know the comparison of years for English learners in terms of the length of time they've been in the States per these grade levels? Because as we know, that makes a big difference. But do we have any data like that on this achievement data?
So I am glad that this person asked this particular question. I have recently, we're fortunate in that we have a new data person on our team in special populations, Mr. Adam Rollins, and he and I have been discussing the different data sets that we will present at the October 10 TESOL meeting on State Day, and certainly that is one of them that we can add. I understand that that is a curiosity and that we have previously asked for districts to monitor long-term English learners. So that's something that we can definitely prepare for you all during 10 TESOL and before and other places as well. But certainly 10 TESOL is a great place to share that.
Great. All right. And this next question, related to that. In fact, the next two questions are related to your response and that idea of long term. We know it's harder to close the gaps in higher grades, and there are some different kinds of struggles with the older learners. Do we know if these students were newcomers? Do we know, again, related to the question we just asked? Do we know any more about that?
So certainly that is something that we can dig into as well. I know that has always been, coming from a district level, a curiosity as well when you get the data back. How many of these children are newcomers? I will certainly get with Mr. Rollins and find out if we can do a further breakdown of that, so that within each grade, perhaps we can identify newcomers and long-term ELLs. That's what I'm hearing as a need, so we can definitely address that.
Okay. And another question, thinking again about the data in the higher grades. Is it possible to know if the rigor is lessening in the gen ed classes as we move into higher grades?
That's an excellent question. I think it's just near and dear to my heart that we don't lessen the rigor. I know that at times some educators may feel that we are doing them a disservice by exposing them to this very rigorous material. But in fact, we know that if we do not do that, we are only increasing that achievement gap. I think that certainly with the implementation of the WIDA standards and that highlighting of language across all content areas, this goes both ways in terms of collaboration. Our ESL colleagues will I guess, learn about and refresh their own knowledge about content standards and understand the rigor, as well as allow content teachers to highlight language. So I will take this implementation as a way of increasing or ensuring that rigor is available to high school level students.
Okay. And the last question, data question. We had quite a few questions on the data that you presented here. Last question on the data. Do we know if there are gaps between the Tennessee data and data from other states? Do we know how we compare with the same data in other states?
Excellent question. I know that our accountability team in the Department of Ed has been working on some comparisons using the national assessment, the NAEP. I can certainly work with them to present that type of information as well and gather that information and make that available. So I know that we did look at that in comparison when the accountability team was helping us to prepare cut scores for the incoming WIDA kindergarten screener. So I will definitely dig more into that and see if we have that for all grade levels.
We have a question about the can-dos. Are there can-dos for the 2020 standards with these KLUs?
Great question. I love these. The can-dos have not been updated. They are certainly still there, but all information that I've received from WIDA is that the can-dos are not updated. But of course, the proficiency level descriptors are there for us. And as a sidebar here, the model performance indicators, those MPIs that we have been accustomed to, they have been retired. So just want to put that out there as well.
Okay. We have a question about training and expectations. What will be the expectation for training teachers on the WIDA content standards in order to be in compliance for monitoring this year? Do we include the framework?
Okay, wonderful. I'm glad that people are thinking about this, and certainly we want to move just beyond compliance. I know in the past we've asked that all teachers are trained on the WIDA standards. Certainly as we begin to learn more about this and the collaborative nature of the standards, this will be up to districts to kind of, I guess I would say, just increase that base knowledge. As I mentioned, we will have regional trainings for ESL and ELA colleagues this year. Certainly, you're welcome to take that information back to districts and work with your ELA colleagues on that. But it is still a compliance measure to ensure that all teachers are trained on the standards. That's still a measure of compliance.
Okay. Another question about long terms. How many long-term ELs are also special education qualified, and can the state begin to extrapolate grouping of similar demographics of SPED to see data trends for growth within these demographic groups?
Well, first, absolutely. And I love that we're hearing a lot about the desire to learn more about and to dig deep into the data. So I will certainly take this back and ask that we provide this information as well. I know that there has always been a desire to make sure that we are doing the best for our dually identified students and to make sure that we are supporting them both through ESL and special ed services. So certainly I'm taking wonderful notes here and realize that that we have some additional data sets to dig into and provide to everybody.
And let me also interject something here, because we've heard in the ELL Collaborative over the years this same concern about the overlap of special education students with English learners. We've also reached out to the Center for Dyslexia here at MTSU, and we have some videos online, livestream.com, that address some of the questions in how to serve English learners with reading difficulties. So on Discord, on the platform that we're going to introduce to you today, a discussion platform, mm-hmm. You can reach out to us to find more information about how to access those videos. And also, as I mentioned earlier, we are forming a third collaborative, the SPED Collaborative, and we have every intention of beginning to offer some cross-collaborative sessions where we pull in educators from both groups and address issues that are of common concern, including English learners and special education. So we hope to be able to give some support here in the PK-12 Collaborative as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that. I did want to also mention that as we have been reviewing at the state level additional opportunities within the WIDA e-learning portal, that there is a course related to supporting students with disabilities who are also English learners. So I'm hoping that that can be available to us as well. And that would start in September, the availability within the portal.
Great. Just clarification, is there, and this is a question, is there information on where to register for regional trainings?
So I would love, Dr. Clark, for us to be able to post some of that information on the platform that you just mentioned. What was that again?
Discord.
Okay. So we will certainly post that information. I've worked to arrange meetings. The first one is in Arlington, Tennessee. I'm working with Dyersburg and Cleveland City. So as soon as we have all those dates and means to register, we'll send that out to Title III directors, the special populations and federal programs newsletters. It will go in all of those, but I'd love to share it through MTSU as well.
We'll be happy to do that. And the last question, this long presentation, full of information. If you could summarize it in one idea or principle or recommendation for teachers to take into the classrooms as they start the school year, how would you summarize what you've said today? What would that message be?
I would say that we know we want to do things correctly for our English learners. We know that there is support needed, and we also realize that educators have 1,000 things to do and that you want to do what's best for students. And for this reason, I would simply say that we want to take this slow and steady. We want to provide you with the support that you need. And in order to do that effectively, we also need to hear from you. And just know that the WIDA resources and the Tennessee Department of Education is here to support you over the next 3 years. We'll take it, and just let us know what you need.
All right, great. Debra, thank you for starting off our Summer Academy this morning. This has been really important information, and I know very helpful to educators listening today. Thanks so much for being with us. Congratulations on your new appointment, and we look forward to continuing to work with you and the Tennessee Department of Ed and Jan Lanier and Nancy Williams, all in support of teachers of English learners and English learners and their families. So thank you, Debra.
Thank you, Dr. Clark.